Hi, me again. So some of you might know that at the start of 2023, I said I was going to listen to 52 new albums and watch 52 films that I have never seen before. And while I didn't have the same goal for video games, I did keep track and write down my thoughts of all the new games I played this year, just so I could make another list ranking video for you all. So without any further ado, here are the 15 new games I played this year, ranked from worst to best. At number 15, a controversial opinion, I'm sure, but we have Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. While the game is very beautiful and the sound design is fantastic, there's something here that didn't click for me and I can't really put my finger on what it was. I think it might have something to do with sandbox games, which are like, hey, go explore. Go do whatever you want. Don't worry about us. You just go ahead and do your own thing. And as soon as I go ahead and do my own thing and start exploring, I'm locked out of doing something really basic, like revealing parts of the map because I haven't progressed the main quest line far enough. And it really annoyed me. Also, another hot take, I wasn't a fan of the whole fusing, like putting things together and making like cars, robots, or whatever the hell that you do. Overall, I've got to say I preferred Breath of the Wild. It was a much more tight experience. Although I will say I really liked the verticality of this game, like how there's like another map basically above your current map. Number 14 is Mass Effect. Man, it's so hard to get into this game as a new player, especially nowadays in this generation of gaming. The combat feels so dated. I mean, it's like 15 years old at this point, but still. And they also have this like Codex Pokedex thing where it gives you all this information about like the galaxy and its inhabitants, which is really cool if you want to find out more information about this new alien that you've just seen, which has like 10 fingers coming out of its ears. But it's really blunt and not that fun. It feels like you're reading a textbook. And good luck remembering the names of the alien races. I legit still don't remember the name of whatever race Garrus is. But once you get past the large entry barrier regarding the lore and the clunky combat, Mass Effect does a fantastic job of world building. I was really interested in the politics between the different alien races and how they regarded each other. Aside from the Codex gimmick that I mentioned earlier, they really don't shove it in your face. It's a lot more subtle. And I've not even mentioned the side characters yet, including your crewmates. Let me tell you, be prepared to get attached to some ones and zeros on that screen. Aside from Ashley, screw her. Number 13 is Neon White. A pretty fun concept. It's basically speed running the game. Great soundtrack, addictive gameplay. Well, as I say addictive gameplay, half of it is a speed running kind of thing, and the other half is like a visual novel, which is cool. It's okay because you kind of need this downtime in between the speed running levels, kind of balances it out. This part of the game also advances the story, which is fine. It's definitely one of the more unique games I played this year. It's pretty short, give it a go. Number 12 is Resident Evil 7. This game was pretty great. I got bloody scared playing this game, so much so that I actually had nightmares about it. The first third of the game is seriously some of the best horror I've ever experienced. I'm talking like in any art form. I'm talking films, books, anything. Something that makes it great is that the villains are actually quite funny in a surreal way. I won't spoil it, but there's a part near the start of the game where you get to meet the family, for lack of a better term, and what follows is equal parts hilarious and horrifying. It's not 100% horror. The game isn't 100% horror. There's still a lot of campiness to it because it's a Resident Evil game after all. But what really stops this game from being higher on my list is like the last third of the game. Like it just felt so unnecessary and boring and it dragged and I was getting bored. And there's a part where you're given a choice like at the start of the third act and there's no apparent right or wrong decision. But let me tell you, I made the wrong decision and I felt like the game resented me for it. Number 11 is Vampire Survivors. There's not much to say about this game except that it's just pure mindless fun. I think it's a great game to play while you're traveling, like long car journeys on the airplane or something. Yeah. Super fun. Give it a go. Number 10 is the Resident Evil 2 remake. While it's not as scary as Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2 really holds up well in like the action horror kind of department. It's the kind of game where ammo is limited and the basic enemies just take a lot to kill. They just don't seem to ever want to die. There's this really great mechanic at the start of the game in the first area that you're in. You're trapped in this police station and then there's this giant enemy in a trench coat and a stupid hat who follows you wherever you are. You could be walking down a corridor and he'd just like burst through a wall and start chasing you. You could be walking down a corridor and you can hear his big stompy feet coming after you. You could be turning a corner and then he'll just be right in your face. I will say it gets to be a bit more of an annoyance than like a terrifying threat after a while, especially if you've been killed by him before. As for the other levels, the sewer level is a sewer level and the secret lab is meh. Like, the game really shines when you're in the police station. It's fantastic. At number 9, we have Mass Effect 3. This is a tale of two games. Like, it has some really high highs and some really piss poor lows. Most of the decisions that you've made in previous games pay off here, especially regarding your crewmates, which you should be super attached to at this point. That being said, some of the decisions that you've made which felt really important in the earlier games just feel completely disregarded in this one. And all of the endings suck as well. Well, not all of them, but the green one totally sucks. Other things to know, the combat is probably the best out of the 3 games here, but you don't really play Mass Effect for the combat. You're here for like the world and the relationships with all the characters. Number 8 is Shadow of the Colossus, a classic from the PS2 era. It's a really unique game, a perfect example of minimal storytelling. The design of the Colossi are great and the mechanics for each one are so engaging that it doesn't really get boring, which is saying something because half of the game is killing Colossi and the other half is riding a horse to go kill Colossi. For some of them though, it was really unclear as to what I was meant to do, even with the hints that the game provides you. Number 7 is Fear and Hunger. This game is horrible, cruel, depressing, sad, and I love it. At the start, you choose one of 4 characters and are tasked with finding the leader of a band of mercenaries who has been captured and is being held in the dungeons of Fear and Hunger. This game does not mess around. Even the first enemies that you probably encounter, they do not mess around. The atmosphere of this game is so crushing and hopeless to the point where I don't want to play it by myself anymore. I only want to play it with other people because otherwise I'll just get really sad. It's made in RPG Maker, so it's a little bit janky, and it can be quite hard to understand what you're meant to do a lot of the time, especially if you go in blind. I would recommend this game to you, but this game is super not for everyone. Like, all the possible content warnings imaginable here. Number 6 is Deltarune. This game is ridiculously funny and charming. If you played Undertale, it's basically more of that. The character designs are great, the soundtrack is excellent, especially the combat music, and I got surprisingly invested into the characters. Like, I was on the edge of my seat during the intense parts. If I was to criticize this, I would say it's a bit overwritten, and each installment could be a bit shorter. It feels a little bit bloated. Like, I started playing this game in January, and I only finished it in November, because I just kept putting it down and then picking it back up and putting it down and picking it back up. It didn't like hold my attention for a super long time. Don't get me wrong, I recommend this game, it's fantastic, but like, it's not as snappy or like attention grabby as it could be. At number 5 is Mass Effect 2. Let me get some complaints out of the way first. As my usual complaint with the Mass Effect games, the combat isn't that fantastic, and the levels feel artificially difficult. It's that Halo 2 thing where like the enemies are just like a bit too strong and there's a bit too many of them. There's also some user interface choices which I find questionable. Overall, I don't feel like the story is as good as Mass Effect 1, but I feel the story here is executed better, if that makes sense. All of these things in mind, this is quite possibly the best example of the second game in a trilogy that you can find, because it builds off so much from the first game and sets in motion so many things for the third. It is absolutely the best game of the trilogy. You get to visit all of these places that you've only heard about in the first game, like the Flotilla, like the Krogan homeworld. You learn about new factions, old feuds, more details on existing races, new alien races in general, and the character development for everyone is just mwah. Whether they're new squad mates, old squad mates, random NPCs that you find on the street, quest givers, side characters in missions. The writing and development of them is just fantastic. The final mission is so action-packed and nail-biting because there's a chance that none of you or your squad will survive. And in a game like this, where your progress is carried over into future games, stuff like that is a really big deal. I'm tempted to say it's one of the best final levels in gaming, but I'll have to think about that a bit more. Number 4 is Lies of P. This is the best Souls-like which isn't made by From Software. Not only because this game understands a lot of the subtleties which make From Software games so great, but it does enough of its own things to kind of forge its own identity and not just kind of get labeled as like a Dark Souls clone or something. For those of you who don't know, Lies of P is a game where you play as Pinocchio. So it's really interesting how they deal with the source material. And I'm not just talking about how they handle like characters, events, or locations, but how it handles the concept of lying. In the source material, lying is seen as a bad thing, you know, he lies and his nose grows. While in this game, the more you lie, the more human you become. So it's kind of exploring the idea that sometimes people lie to make other people feel better. All in all, if you're looking for something to tide you over until the Elden Ring DLC comes out, then you can't get much better than Lies of P. Number 3 is Street Fighter 6. I played a lot of Street Fighter 4 when I was younger, and I really didn't enjoy Street Fighter 5. So when I heard that Street Fighter 6 was good, I downloaded the demo and I loved it. I just knew I had to get it. What really makes this stand out more than previous games is how user-friendly it is to people who are new to fighting games. Not only does it have the option to turn on a simple control scheme to make the combos and special inputs a lot easier for new players, but there's really good guides for each character, and there's even a really good tutorial to teach you the basics of fighting games. Gameplay-wise, it's fantastic. The combos feel impactful, the super moves feel so fun. It feels like you don't need a really high skill level to get the most out of this game. The art design, the music, the cinematics at play when you hit a super, all terrific. Whether you love fighting games or are a little bit interested in fighting games, you should absolutely give this one a shot. Number 2 is Resident Evil 4 Remake. It feels like with each Resident Evil game, there's a dial. On one end, it says horror, on the other end, it says campy. Resident Evil 7's dial was definitely turned to horror, but Resident Evil 4 is turned all the way in the other direction to camp. The moment I knew I was going to enjoy this game was right near the start. Where Leon is trapped on the second floor of this little house with 2 zombies blocking his exit. He exclaims, "Huh, I'll see myself out," in a really snarky protagonist way, and then he freaking dives out a window. I loved it. It's so fun, so campy and fun. What bothers me though is that a lot of people who have played the original say that they've taken out a lot of the more ridiculous one-liners from this game. I think because Capcom are trying to make Resident Evil be a bit more of a serious franchise, which I don't get why. I've also started to see a pattern in Resident Evil games where the first act is fantastic and then as the game continues, it just gets a bit worse and worse. It's dumb, fun action. Fantastic stuff. And that leaves number 1, the game which I enjoyed the most this year in 2023 is Outer Wilds. I love this game so much. Each planet that you go to is unique and brilliantly designed. The mystery which surrounds the little solar system that you're in is so well crafted. There's one aspect of this game which I got really, really obsessed with. I won't say what it is. And I spent so much time looking into it and trying to figure out its secrets. And once I figured it out, the payoff was phenomenal. I was left absolutely speechless at the end of the game. This is quite possibly one of my favorite games of all time. However, there is quite a large flaw which I encountered and I feel a lot of people encountered, and it's to do with how the game doesn't really give you much direction. It's all on you to figure this out. There's no waypoints, there's no quest markers or anything to tell you where you're meant to go next. I watched a video where someone explained it this is a game where you are given an item like a shoe and you like this shoe, it's a good shoe, you spend a long time trying to put on the shoe only to later find out that this isn't a shoe, it's a hat. There's things in this game which you feel like you figured out, you know what this is from the get-go, only to find out that you've been going about it completely wrong the whole time. And it can get quite frustrating. Like I said, there's no quest markers or progress indicator. I was following a bunch of different leads and they were all dead ends. And I found it so disheartening because the game doesn't pat you on the back and say, hey, good job, you just need to carry on a little bit more, then you've nearly completed this quest or whatever. And I found it a bit disheartening because the game doesn't reward you. You've made a bunch of progress even though it doesn't feel like it. And after a while of that, I felt like I was going nowhere and I just stopped playing for a bit. And then I don't know what it was. I just started to play it again and I ended up completing it. It's interesting though, because I don't know what the solution is. Because if this game did have a lot of progress indicators, if it held your hand even a little bit, then a lot of the charm and a lot of the accomplishment that you feel from playing this game just disappears. All I can say is that if you're playing this game or if you're going to play this game and there's a point where you feel like giving up, maybe just take a bit of a break and come back to it a little bit later. Just keep playing it. It is totally worth it in the end. But to circle back around, absolutely my favorite game that I've played this year. Incredibly charming. I love the universe that it's in. The music, the sounds, the design of all the planets, the themes in this game. Oh, forget about it. It's just fantastic. Go play this game if you can. And that's it. Those were the games that I played from worst to best in 2023. Maybe I'll do this again next year. I'm not sure. It was quite fun to do. I encourage all of you to do something similar. Keep track of the games that you play, the books that you read, the films that you watch, the albums that you listen to. Make a note of them, rank them just for fun. And hey, if you make a video ranking that, then I'll watch it. I'll give it a thumbs up. I'll like, comment, and subscribe. Anyway, bye.